Good evening, our esteemed viewers. Welcome to the tower at UNN. My name is Dr. Juko, the host and presenter of this show. We are in a very crashy week. This week has had a lot of issues in Uganda, and these are the issues that we're going to discuss today. In most of the trending news, China has been mentioned to be in great shape, and they want to take over the Entebbe airport because of the 740 billion loan that they offered. This was found out by COSASE parliamentary committee, in which they discovered that Entebbe airport is a risk of being mortgaged or taken away by China. It is very, very interesting to note that even the minister admitted, Mr. Kaseija admitted there are loopholes in the 740 billion loan agreement Uganda signed with Exim Bank of China for the expansion of the Entebbe International Airport. According to this information, the Exim Bank of China can take over Entebbe Airport in case Uganda fails to pay back the loan of 750 billion. In this agreement, Uganda will be subject to the Chinese legal regime in case of any disagreement or failure to pay the loan to the bank. This very week, we had a lot of other trending issues, particularly the speech by the president. The president had a keynote address on the 28th of October, 2021. Mr. President talked about the opening up of the economy and the schools in January 2022. He said by the end of 2022 December, by the end of 2021 December, Uganda will have received 23 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine, and that will help to cover up the 12 million Ugandan people. He also noted that Uganda cannot be threatened by terrorists. That Uganda has fought wars which cannot be, they can't be scared by just these simple terrorists. Mr. Museveni also talked about the issue of sectarianism. I don't know why the president these days talks about the Bachwezi. I don't know. I think we'll have to have an explanation from some of the experts. All these are the issues we're going to discuss tonight in the tower at UNN. With me in the studios, I have Honorable Dr. Miriam Matembe, who is one of the Ugandan activists, a human rights activist. She was part of those people that drafted the constitution. She was a member of parliament for long, the Ugandan parliament. And she is continuously working to see Uganda liberated from those hands of the dictatorship. Will you welcome Honorable Matembe? Welcome to the tower at UNN. Can you greet our viewers?
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be on this program, and I'm looking forward to hear and participate in this debate.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's a pleasure as well to have you at the tower at UNN this evening. Also in the studios, I have Lawrence Semgoma, a forensic analyst, and our usual discussant at the tower. Welcome to this tower, Mr. Semgoma, Lawrence, all the way from Boston. Can you work on your sound? Lawrence, your sound is not coming out properly. We have trouble with your sound, Lawrence. Let me have one of another guest. We have Desire. Desire, you are welcome to the tower.
Thank you so much. As always, it's always a pleasure to be here, exchange ideas, and talk about the trending issues that are happening in our nation and what ways we can go forward as a nation as we move to our own liberation.
Yes, Desire. Thank you very much for that introduction. Let me bring over Lawrence. Lawrence. I think we can hear you properly now. Lawrence, can you tell us? Can you greet our viewers as we continue?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Giuco, for once again inviting me to the tower. It's always a pleasure being part of this big discussion to articulate issues to the wider Ugandan community, more so the one in the diaspora, and all our viewers who can, view us and listen to us through our different media channels. Um, I'm indeed honored to always get that invite to be part of this big talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. We shall be having some other guests coming over, but when they come, we shall be in touch with them. Let me start with Doctor. Doctor, we have a problem that has surfaced through the parliamentary committee of COSASI. This committee is quite evident when they articulated the problem of the airport. The airport seems to be in a balance to be taken over by some of our, by the Chinese bank. So, Honorable, what is your take about this, and how do you think? What do you think the trouble we are in can be covered up?
Mr. Katega, for sure, I don't know whether I really have answers such issues because first of all, I don't participate in those debates in COSASE, and I don't know the details of that agreement which they entered into the airport. And so I don't think I have much to contribute on this subject.
Okay.
But what I know, I want to say that it would be extremely unfortunate to have such kind of situation because at one time I think I was it in Zambia where I came to learn that because the Zambian government had got so much loan from the Chinese, now the Chinese were taking over, like you take over electricity, you take over water, you take over all these kind of things. I did not imagine it could also happen to Uganda, but I want to say that with Ugandan level of corruption, anything can happen in this country. And it's quite unfortunate that such things are happening. And we can't do much as Ugandans. We shout and nothing happens. I remember at one time the president was talking of how he knows all this corruption that is happening with Uganda Airlines, when in fact they had just brought these few planes. And one wonders how now corruption has come over that matter. So I am sorry, I don't have much to say on that issue because I'm not a participant anywhere in this.
Yes, Honorable, because what I think when it comes to issues of it seems like even the minister, even anybody that would be responsible, is not taking the responsibility to look at the agreement, and this really is very, very disappointing.
You know what, Mr. Katerega, let me tell you, when it comes to these agreements, I will give you one example. Like our president has been saying that Uganda, earlier the first Uganda Airlines was closed and was rubbishing it and that kind of thing. By that time, I was a minister for ethics and integrity. I was the minister for ethics and integrity. And the government was trying to enter into an agreement with South African government of
Yes.
our airlines.
Mm.
And every cabinet meeting they would come and say, Uganda Airlines, we want this kind of loan, we want this loan. Until we said, but if Uganda Airlines cannot work, why don't we close it and instead of incurring all these loans when we don't have money to pay and when it is not doing anything at all? And then we said we want now to enter into agreement with the South African Airlines, the government. And this agreement was written and they wrote it for, I said, let the Minister of Ethics look at it.
Mm.
And I got that agreement. You cannot believe it. We made a committee of the Minister of Transport and then Minister of Justice and Attorney General and me, the Minister of Ethics and Integrity. So the agreement was given to me in our office. We studied it and we found it was such a terrible agreement, where in this agreement, every time there would be a profit, it would go to the South African Airways, and when there was some loss, Uganda would meet it.
Mm.
And there was no way Uganda was going to get any profit at all. And I brought, when after studying it, I called this meeting of the three ministers committee, and when I presented them what the argument was like, they could not believe it. And yet this argument was being made by the Solicitor General, and all those staff of the Ministry of Justice were there. They had read that agreement, I believe. It was so, unbelievable that you could make such an agreement, and therefore I recommended to the cabinet that the Uganda Airlines be closed because we cannot enter into that agreement. And then when the president, we met in a cabinet, when the president was told that, the recommendation is that the Uganda Airlines would rather close down because we can't manage. And then they said, oh, the Minister of Ethics and Integrity. He said, but since when did Matebe become a pilot or anything? What does she know about these matters of the planes and so on? I said, I know matters of ethics and integrity, and I am sure this contract was based on corruption and whatever it is, and it can't work. So that is how we closed Uganda Airlines. If I had not studied that agreement, it would have caused us such terrible consequences. So you can imagine these people who enter into such agreements. If, for instance, they go to China and sit with them and they put them in these big hotels and they enjoy, and the other ones write agreements and our staff just go and sign. That's what happens. It's so painful. It's so painful. I don't know if this is what has happened. Last night I was looking at our minister. You are joking. You don't know Uganda. This minister, the members of parliament were talking of these new administrative units like, municipalities, cities, and the district councils and committees, which were created, and there are no funds at all to give to them to operate. And I saw the minister, he was on our TV, he said, yeah, this was just politics. We created them because of politics. And he was laughing and saying, there's no money. It's politics. That is your Uganda. That's why some of us really are so pained. It is so painful, but we can't do much.
Honorable, there is what we call a political subterfuge. It seems like within the state there is another state which is what it wants is what happens. The other ministers are just shadows and they do nothing about what happens. They just come to sign papers. Is that true?
Well, I think the ministers also should be blamed for what if they are signing anything, because I have ever been a minister. If you bring, it is actually, I don't think ministers sign contracts. I don't know whether they sign or it is the ministry, in which case the accounting officer signs, I can't remember. But I cannot see my ministry signing a contract which I have not read through and understand what it means. But as you will know, you will understand, the president said that he was appointing fishermen. What did that mean to you?
So it's now the
somebody, let me tell somebody from like anyone, our minimum is A.
Yes.
Somebody who has never worked. Many of these people, somebody who has never worked. You look at our people. When you are going to appoint a prime minister of a country, you can't pick somebody because she supports you so much.
And then you just pick somebody without even any experience.
When I was a minister, one thing I learned before I left, I disagreed with Museveni and I left, was that I learned that Museveni does not value or respect cabinet. He doesn't think that it is of any use.
I think, Doctor, it's not only the cabinet, if even we would say the institutions.
I'm now on the cabinet.
Yes.
Now on the cabinet. Does not respect or value cabinet. He just thinks it is a body to endorse, just to endorse what he wants.
To legitimize, yes.
Yes, and when you see him appointing anybody, just anybody, for him he thinks anybody can be like a cabinet minister or anything, except the only job not anybody can do is, not other people can do, is presidency. But the rest of the thing, he thinks anybody can do anything because he would be the one bringing forward his ideas and the other people endorse him. And I can assure you, like the current cabinet, I don't think there is anybody who can question what President Museveni brings on the table. I don't think anybody can raise a question on it. So that's why when you see this Kasaija and he just laughs it off, I just can't understand why such a person is still holding a ministry of finance when he knows things are happening like that. It seems like, well, this is what is going on. This is it. Once the president wants that, that's it. And then they turn, and the president again turns around and condemns and blames them. And
Yes, Doctor. Thank you very much for contribution on that topic. We're going to come back to you when it comes to the topic of the speech of the president, because we have some issues that we need you to clarify, to have your opinion as well. For now, let me have the people in the studios here.
I can't hear them.
Yes, I'm going to get you off. I'll get you back when you have the other topic. Honorable.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable. That was Honorable Miriam Matembe, who is a renowned activist, and then she has been on the scene for quite a long time. Let me come back to the people in the studio. Lawrence, what is your take? Entebbe Airport is being taken away by the Chinese. Let's have your take. I think we have a problem with Lawrence. Let me bring in direct. We have a pleasure to have been joined by Sophie. Sophie, you're welcome to the show. Can you greet our viewers?
Thank you, Dr. Juko. Our viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's a pleasure that I'm on this platform and I've been invited to be a guest on the tower. We appreciate all of you and your time that you've taken. And I'm so blessed that I'm on the platform with really special people, especially Honorable Miriam Matembe. So pleased that I'm on the same platform. Thank you.
with Desire in this regard. Desire, it seems like you have heard how Dr. Matembe was talking about the issue of the airport. I mean, these things are signed by people that really don't feel the pain. I think they feel the pain, but they don't have something to do about it. Uganda seems to be totally in occupation. Everything that is said or anything that is done is done out of that feeling of the people. It seems like their interest is run the government the way it is, and then as long as people will follow you up. What's your take about this?
I think first of all, I want to thank Honorable Miriam Matembe for her admission towards this issue, and I think that what we as a public are coming to a recognition of is the confusion that is. First of all, is the confusion that is in politics, but not only is there confusion in politics, it's lack of accountability that is requested of these leaders has led to a much bigger confusion because whilst we were preparing for the show, we went back to see what actually is happening and why are we at a point where we might lose our airport. As Honorable Matembe has submitted, she helped to hold Ugandan Airlines. But why is it that when we go back and start to see what actually is happening, is in 2016, the Ugandan, for all of a sudden, Uganda wanted to expand its airport, looking for a loan, and then 2018 they get this hefty loan that they have no way of paying. But then also then last year 2020 we buy all these new aircrafts, and we're talking about a population that is we're focusing. The government has decided, the government has been used, not decided, because we're in a system whereby the government is used by a warlord who just took over everything, and nothing works unless they decide if they should work east or west, whereby most of our population cannot even travel via road, but we're focusing on airport transportation and the flying in and out of people. Whereas when the Ugandan public itself doesn't even have access to roads to transport for goods and services. So the question then comes down to, we know there is hefty corruption, but also the misleadership is encouraged by lack of accountability. And yet again, the misleadership is further encouraged by not being informed. These deals are signed. For example, like this one was signed September 2018, but without the knowledge of the Ugandan public, and it's signed for the Ugandan people and in the name of the Ugandan people. And this is not broadcasted and put on media sites or put out there for us to know. But then when there is a problem like near the loss of our airport, then they deem it essential for us as a public to know. And then the next question was, who actually went and signed these agreements? We had Honorable Kasaija there. Actually, Mr. Kasaija was there, Sam Kutesa, and William Byaruhanga. And then you ask, what do all these people have to do with the Ministry of Just Finance? Again, if we go by, a ministry is supposed to sign an agreement. So I think what is happening right now, or what this shows, is it brings on the question of how much more debt is there that can, because the first agreement was Uganda was to give up its part of Lake Naluvale to the Chinese. That was the first agreement. Then they later agreed to the airport. So why is it that this information was put forth to the Ugandan public in when this agreement was reached? But now we get to know this information when it seems like we're at the sour end of this whole situation. So it's not only about the corruption, it's also the confusion. And again, it goes back to what what has already been said, getting unqualified people in places just because they're going to accept and let everything pass by. And then the bigger question is, what was this money even used for? Can we account for this money? Because that question has not yet been addressed. Can we account for where this money has gone? And the airport was given forth because the people who represented the Ugandan people claimed that we can build another airport in Hoima or Jinja. So my question is, why are you now crying on national TV if you can go build another airport in Hoima or Jinja? So all in all, it it shows the confusion, it shows the lack of respect, it shows that there is no leadership to be offered by the government as it stands. There is no resolutions that they can offer the Ugandan people, and we are at threat. Our economy has always been at threat of being seized by anyone, as this government is just at the receiving end of loans. So that's where I'll end my submission.
Thank you very much, Desire. Thank you very much. Let me bring in Lawrence. Lawrence, you've heard Honorable Matembe talking about how nasty is the situation in Uganda, the way they handle issues, and it seems like many of these people that in a position of power don't even know what is signed, or they just brought papers to sign, not reading through, or not even having a hand into them. Like you had Mr. Kasaija saying that there were loopholes in the agreement. Would you please have your submission on this?
All right. Thank you again, Nadine, for that question. When I try to look at Uganda's issues surrounding for foreign direct investment, or more commonly referred to as national debt, and at the time, I think the national debt has got up to more than 50% as of this year. It was 44%, but we pretty much ramped it up during this COVID or lockdown phase to borrow as much. And this is no rocket science. We're only borrowing because we have looked at the production units, or companies. Employees of these companies are actually home, so there's not much they're making, and if the people are not working, then the country is not going to collect as much revenue. Right now, that is what we're faced by. We're just borrowing more right now because we don't have capacity to collect locally. But getting back to probably where just focusing on the national hairline, where this whole thing starts from, is you go back to the privatization scheme, just like Honorable Mariam Tembe has labored to explain. And at that time, we agreed that the national airline wasn't functioning and we had to close it. And there were all these other, there were so many reports that were circulated. Yes, at least one ended up on her desk. There are many that ended up, yes, in BOU and many other offices, such that they can all try to analyze the state of the airline and see what to do for it. And it was agreed at that time, unanimously or otherwise, that they had to get rid of the airline in order, to create a more profitable venture for the country. And yes, we can agree that the airline then had issues, like I think most of the people who are actually, especially government officials, they were not even paying for their tickets to use the national airline because it's national. They were just getting free rides. If you're running a business, you have maybe a taxi or whatever, and then your relatives use that service without paying, and in this case, it was the government officials, you're definitely going to make losses. More so if most of them know that they have an open ticket to go anywhere, the airline can drop them. Those are some of the issues it faced at the time, which again, you can see they were coming from, again, the same people who are proposing that the airline has to go. But what happens just about the time when you're transitioning from Uganda, the airline corporation, to whatever, selling it out to the South Africans and all these other subsidiaries that had to come in to take over our routes and all that? Well, you remember what happened in that whole project. It's more like NHAS took over a certain percentage of shares, and then we had Caleb International, which was owned by the president's brother at that time, take off a certain percentage of that. And it was just a scheme to just get those shares for almost free at that time. And looking at how the airline, the airline is set up right now, if you just go to the Civil Aviation website, or, I think it's the only place you can get any information, you're going to see that they have so many services that are under the airline. So when I hear that the Chinese are taking over the airline or they're taking over Entebbe. What are they exactly taking over? Are they taking over handling services? Are they taking over the clearing and forwarding? What are they exactly taking over when you say that? Are they taking over the land? Because I think there was a news headline a while back, that's over 10 years ago actually. It was in 2008 when the MPs were, asking I think the CAA to, by them, to produce the land titles for Entebbe International Airport, citing that they could have been part of the deal, to sell over, to sell off the airline, which happened, in the same case with UCCB. I mean, UCB, the bank, when they took over the bank, all the properties that were under the bank that were actually even valued more than, the value of the bank itself. UCB even had properties abroad, and I would imagine even the airline had a lot outside Uganda. All that went into the packet just like that. So at the moment when we discuss, or when this comes to the forefront, that the Chinese are taking over, what are they taking over exactly? Is it the land? Is it the operations? Yes, there's a lot of money to make in an airline if you know how that business goes. Yes, handling services that having share, rather the majority shares in. I don't know whether he relinquished those shares, but there's a lot of money to make in that space if you know how the traffic. So if we're going to hand this over to the Chinese, and this is probably they are more efficient, is it really going to, when they take over, is it all of a sudden going to be more profitable? And if I may ask, is the airline right now any profitable, such that can hand over to our, our creditor to recoup? Okay, to recoup over. I mean, to recoup. I don't know if Nadine is trying to say something. I didn't hear him. Yes, sorry, Doctor, I didn't hear that quite well, but he's on mute. I can't hear him.
Lawrence, can you go ahead? Let me have Sophie in. Sophia, do you hear me? Let's have, let me have Sophie now. Sophia, you have heard all this said, and we try to see what is really happening in Uganda. The situation seems to be in disarray. The people that are responsible for working on some of the issues seem to be taken for granted. The president does everything by himself, and at the end, things go wrong, and then starts blaming other people. What's your take about that?
Well, thank you, Dr. Juko. First of all, the situation in Uganda, I mean, I might put a sort of a smile, but the situation in Uganda is quite abysmal, really, and it's quite saddening. I mean, you go from sad to frustration to hopeless. My take on it is that the president of Uganda, or current general of Uganda, is the God and the God and the God. I say this because the people are giving him that power to be the God and the God and the God. So if you didn't give someone the power to make decisions for your life, then that person would probably not have the power to make the decisions that they're making. And because us, the Ugandans, have given that power to these politicians, and particularly the person who's in charge of our resources, of our everything about all the decision makings, economic, social, health, everything is like one man band. So he's just simply says which way should you go, which drum should I beat, and everyone starts dancing. That sort of dancing to a beat or to a drum because any person has, sort of made a sound, it is not good for us. It's not good. And I can explain this because, as a social worker by profession, I can only explain it through the human behavior. Our behavior shows to this person who's in charge of our country, that we are okay with the status quo. We are okay to let him beat the drum or beat the, give us the beat, and we say, which tune, how can we dance to this tune, instead of saying, well, actually the tune is out of sync. It's not in the rhythm that we want to dance to it, but we just bang our heads and probably dance, instead of dancing maganda, we're dancing rock, uh rock music, banging our heads. That's the only way, way how I can explain it. Being a social worker, I can only explain human behavior through, you know sort of psychological, or philosophical explanations or thoughts or perspectives. And to me, the current situation is that we've given a person who's got narcissistic, tendencies and characteristics, we've given them the, you know the the power to do whatever they please with our country. We've done that through going along with the status quo, through saying it's okay that we are treated this way, to say that, the roads will not be made, but you can continue having the loans that you have. This is how we've got to this. For where does the money go? Because surely it doesn't go into the resources. It doesn't go into the infrastructure of our country. If the airport to this point in time is going to be taken over by the Chinese, and yet they say apparently, according to reported sources, 8 billion of that, according to the finance minister, Mr. Kashaija, the 8 billion of that was taken out on loan. However, 7 billion has already been spent, right? Has already been taken out in the form of loan. So, and the airport is supposed to be in the hands of the Chinese, just like Lawrence was saying. What part of the airport are they taking? The airport is supposed to be in the hands of the Chinese for over 20 years. What does that mean? I mean, I'm thinking, or I have a hypothesis that thinks the reason why we had the toll on the highway, because the highway was built by the same people who are now taking over, the international airport, is that they built that road toll obviously to be able to collect, I suppose, the loans that we owe them. But if that's all we have to show for it, there was supposedly, that there would be improvement on the airport. I don't see much improvement at the, at Entebbe International Airport. I don't see any improvement, like Desire was saying, on how building another airport anywhere else. If this is what we call progress in 40 years, we can either sit back, relax, and take whatever comes to us, or we can take action. We can either be here online and, and lament and talk until the cows come back, or we take action. If we're just going to be, we can talk for the next 10 years and there would probably be nothing, because if there's no action, then pretty much there's nothing. We need to say, this is our dream. Our vision is to change the status quo. And how do we change that? We need step by step, just like we've started off obviously with the UFCC, step by step, to say we've had enough. We've had enough. We need change. Enough of the status quo. Enough of saying that now, someone is going to take over for 20 years. This is exactly how colonization starts. We're starting off with one foreign, entity which is coming in to take, the airport. The next thing, we're going to have someone come over to take our education. The next thing, we're going to come over someone taking over all our hospitals. And what else? What else are we? I apologize. What else are we going to stop at? what else are we going to give up without, shouting loud enough to say that enough is enough? You've started on the airport. Now there can't be anything else. I mean, we know that they've taken quite a lot of, there's a lot of things that have gone into the hands of foreigners or into the hand of colonizers, this in this form coming as new colonizers from Asia and not from Europe or from the Americas. But when are we going to say, stop, enough is enough? Thank you. Is Doctor still around? Lawrence?
Yes, I can hear you, Sophia. Thank you so much for that. Can you hear me? I think you should be able to hear me. Thank you so much, Sophia, for that submission right there. I think, yes, your voice rather complements what everyone has to say about this other issue. But one other point I wanted to bring out before I ask Desire to jump in there is I think by the time, just looking at the airport, like I asked you, I mean, I just presented to you earlier, when you say the Chinese are taking over, what exactly are they taking over? Is it the entire airport? Our debt is that big that we indeed have a 740 billion, and these are shillings, okay, that we have to pay back. And we included in our, I mean, we would lease this airport to them for 20 years in order to recoup that. Well, that actually has some truth to it to a certain extent, because looking at the statistics of what we get from, what we have at the airport, I think that might actually be true to a certain extent. Ugandans, all in all, today are spending over 400 million on air travel. That is how much the airport actually rakes in. So you can see there's actually money coming in from the airport. But this doesn't necessarily mean that is money that comes to the state or any one person just as is. This is it's distributed amongst the different airlines that are occupying that space. And of course, of late you saw we have a national airline resurrected. Actually, it's about 1.4 trillion to resurrect that. And yes, we're hoping that bringing it back to life right now, we're going to make it work better than it was 20 years ago. But please note that 20 years ago or 30, before it was closed, it needed just about some small figure. It was about $6 or $7 million that it needed to resurrect it at the time. But we decided to let go of the airline. And at that time, if you look at some of the studies that were done, the airline had actually grown up by over 56%. That is according to Andrea Golden. That is a study that he did about African airlines back in the day. So you can see the airline was doing well, and then it's taken away. Now we're spending way more to kick it from the ground. But leaving the airline alone, because that is not the only thing that is actually running at the airport. I don't know what percentage of the national airline, I don't know what percentage you were taking of the revenue that we see, just looking at probably the $400 million dollars or so that Ugandans are spending on travel. But if I'm reading now, do you think that the Chinese will be able to maybe recoup their money running the airline for the given period of time? What is your take on that?
That yes, the possibility of the Chinese fully managing the Ugandan airport and getting their money back and resources is possible, because it's mishandling in Uganda that makes things not lucrative. We've had so many industries that are lucrative, but as soon as a private company comes in, then that industry becomes lucrative. When someone else is handling it, then it becomes lucrative. It points back to having unqualified people in these places of power to make decisions. And it also comes back to these things are looted by corrupt leaders. They take the money and then they let it die by itself. So looking at the context whereby no one else should be managing our airport for us, because we did not go through colonialism to free ourselves for that to happen. But then yet again, we've been living under neo-colonialism for a good period of time, whereby the Americans and the UK have still managed to control how we spend our resources, as our hands are tied by IMF Bank and all the loans that we still owe to IMF. So in regards to that, to the question of colonialism, is that it's coming at us from both ways. It's coming at us from both ways, but our leaders do not help because they're used to easy handouts. So to your question, yes, the Chinese could rebuild and get their money from the airport in 20 years and then keep it pushing. But what does this mean for Uganda? But at the end of the day, I'm not surprised that this could happen. And I do think if someone handles it, they could pay. But also that doesn't negate the fact that if this government is ousted, that Ugandans who actually are qualified and care about the country could also run that airport and it could be lucrative. So it's not only the Chinese, it's just the mishandling of this present serving government.
We should have not, shouldn't have accepted some of the clauses, but as I told you, the price is either to take it or leave it.
What happens to Uganda Civil Aviation Authority and the Ugandan airport if we failed to pay this money? What would happen?
No. Me, I don't think it's at risk. As I said, if in the unlikely event CAA were to fail to generate sufficient revenue to service the loan, then the central government will step in.
So there are so many clauses in that agreement that do not favor the country as Uganda, and therefore to us, we need to dig deeper.
The expansion of the airport will see the building of a new passenger terminal, cargo center, and fuel center. In 2015, Uganda entered into a loan agreement worth 710 billion shillings with the Exim Bank of China to facilitate the expansion and renovation of Entebbe International Airport. 7 years later, the Parliament Committee on Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises, COSASE, has unearthed major gaps in the agreement likely to cause financial loss to the country. Despite Uganda being a sovereign state, the agreement was signed based on a Chinese legal regime with all litigation.
Yes, thank you very much for the video. I think that wraps up almost everything that we've been trying to talk about here as regards this topic. And let's have a break. And when we come back, we're gonna go direct and discuss the issue of the president's address, and then we shall get sense out of that. Thank you very much.
Time takes a toll on everyone, they say. Time is merciless, it won't wait for us to change. Time, I am stressing out, I can't figure out what to say. Oh, time, Just give us time. Time. Looking back on pictures, and I find it hard to see you and myself in places where we used.
Welcome back to the tower at UNN once again, the second part of the show. My name is Dr. Juke as usual, and the host and presenter of the show. As we try to wrap up the topic of the airport, I would love each of you to have a 2 minutes wrap up, and then we go to the next topic. Let me start with Desire.
In regards to wrapping up with what's happening with the airport, I would say that we need, there's nothing now, the only thing that can be done now is a total power change of leaders who actually can be held accountable by the people, who inform the people about what's happening to their resources. But as it is now, we need to keep our ear on the ground as people who are, we're still all Ugandans, and know what this is going to cost us and how long this is going to cost us, because the process is irreversible and we must look to mend it one way or another, with and the only mendable way is with a power change.
Thank you very much, Desire. Let me bring in Lawrence in 2 minutes to wrap up that topic.
Yes, thank you so much, Nadine, right there. About the airline, I think my last kind of thoughts on it is I think the COSASE, what they are doing right now is just examining the effects. So after the fact that damage has already been done. I mean, if the Chinese already have a contract that is already, written in their favor, and they have clauses that suppose that in the event we fail to pay, which seems to be our current scenario right now because we're still borrowing more, I don't think you could be, you could convince me that you're able to pay your debts if you are unable even to raise enough funds to, run the current economy at the moment. If you're borrowing more, that means you can't pay up for your debts. And I think that was well explained by the Minister of Finance, Matia Kasaija, that at the moment we're barely making payments for the interest, or at least we're making payments on the interest for the debts we have. So if at all we're in a situation like this, then I guess this is just another. This is just going to be another lesson. If it's already, carved in stone like it is, and we can't go back on that agreement, because I doubt the ability of COSASE or even the Ugandan parliament at the moment to reverse those, the agreement at the moment. We already took the money, so we just have to go by the terms we set out in there. And yes, it's that is a real possibility that we are actually going to use the airport, at least for, the airport for those 20 years, and God knows how much revenue we're going to do. But I mean, it should be a lesson to future leaders, especially if you're out there and you're thinking of getting into leadership. You should be probably more patriotic when you sent on state missions and you have to draft agreements that are supposed to be in favor of the nation. So for me, it's crying over spilled milk. If this is already a done deal in the agreement, and already the president and all the people who are involved already, put it into motion, we are only going to just pick up the tab. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are. And maybe let's just hope that we do not have a repeat of this. Of course, in 20 years' time, I hope, we will have a change in leadership, at least for those wrong elements who drafted agreements like this.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Let me have Sophia finally to give in 2 minutes, just to give a wrap up on that topic.
Thank you, Dr. Juko. Well, my take on it is that, it's a sad and despicable, we call a spade what it is. I don't like to mince my words or sort of, sugarcoat the words. The fact of the matter is that the amazingly poor leadership that we have had or we are continuing to have is indeed putting us in mud waters. We're all soaked in that we can't even breathe. The fact of the matter, they've now taken over. They're talking about, I suppose it's set in stone now that they're taking over the management of the airport. We know that there's definitely going to be more. This is just opening a can of worms, because I'm sure there's more deals, dirty deals that have been signed over the lives and livelihoods of Ugandans. What will happen to those people that work at the airport? What will happen to, I'm sure there's going to be job losses. I'm sure there's going to be other people working at the airport instead of, Ugandans. I'm sure there's going to be more emigration, from Uganda as a result of this important resource of our nation. Right? We only have one airport, and one airport only is now being occupied by, is going to be occupied by foreigners. What does that say about us as a people? That is our first, the face of us. When you come in, what do you see? This is our face as Ugandans. This is the first door that any foreigner or anyone can come in to, to say, well, welcome to Uganda. What are we going to say now? Because I'm sure the face of it will change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sophia, over that. Let me go direct to another topic, the issue of the presidential address. The presidential address was very, very pertinent this week, where the president was very categorical on a lot of issues. He talked about the opening of schools in January, and also talked about the vaccination issue, that people by December 2021, we shall have 23 million doses of COVID-19. He also talked about the issue of the bail. Again, the bail issue came back into play, and also the issue of the terrorists. Doctor, we as Ugandans, whenever we see the president coming over to speak, we feel like there's something very important that people have to listen to. But it seems like it's the same stories that come over all the time whenever he comes to speak. Yes, doctor.
I don't know what you want me to say, because the person you're talking to gave up long ago on the president you're talking about. Because for me, I have come to know our president as a liar. And he comes and talks, but nevertheless, we can always discuss what he's talking about. And for me, on the issues which you are raising, I would rather maybe discuss this matter of bail. I don't know what he's after by insisting that people should not be given bail, because I don't understand what he means, unless it is just focused on the political opponents whom he wants them in prison forever. Because bail is not mandatory to give bail, although it is a human right to apply for bail. Usually the discretion is left with the judiciary, the one who is presiding over the case, having listened to the justification for the bail and taking into account all those issues you must take into account in order to grant bail, so that when this is realized, bail is granted. For me, as far as I'm concerned, the president should be looking at the capacity of the institutions that are dealing with these criminal issues. Because it is not failure to grant bail that is causing all this failure of justice and fairness. It is because of the weak institutions with no capacity, polluted by corruption, of course, nepotism, political patronage. All these things combine or conspire together to make the institution of justice fail to handle what it should be handling. For instance, if you want prisoners to be handled without having even to consider bail, if you do quick execution or prosecution of the cases, would you now be having a problem with the bail? Because the priorities of our government are upside down. I'll give you one example. If you go in the whole of Ankole region and you find that there are only 2 high court judges and only 1 resident one, and yet you find that in that area...
Doctor, to clarify to our viewers, how many districts make up Ankole region? Do you know how many districts make up Ankole region right now?
Well, there are quite many. Because when you go to what was Greater Mbarara is now 7 districts plus city. If you go to Ushenyi, which was Greater Ushenyi, is now 5 districts, and then you go to Tungamu. Yes, that side there are 5 districts. So when you add them, I think they are like that is
around 20 something. Yes.
They are more. I think they are like 20 or something like
yes,
that.
more than 20.
So you find there two judges, and yet there are 45 members of parliament. You see what I'm talking about? When everything is politicized for sustenance in power, then other institutions are left just like that. How many prosecutors are there compared to members of parliament in the whole country? So what is the priority of our government? And these prosecutors or justices or attorney general, how much money are they paid? When you find that somebody like a state attorney is earning like 2 million, when a member of parliament is earning 30 millions. And mark you have like 2 state attorneys in the whole place, while you have about 50 RDCs, assistant RDC. I don't know how to explain this thing, but you can imagine.
And you have more than 100 members of parliament from Ankole region.
Yes. So what is the priority of this government, and where does the question of bail come in, when in fact you have failed to capacitate to fill the judges? You don't have enough judges or magistrates. You don't have enough state attorneys. You don't have enough prosecutors. You don't have all these for administration of justice. But when you go to the political arena, you have all those useless offices. ISO, you have 80 ministers, you have like 80 presidential advisors who sit and do nothing and earn so many millions, 20 millions, what kind of money, and then you come and say, bail, I want bail because I want justice. Do you look at the institution, strengthen the institution, build their capacity so that they can expedite the hearing of cases where would now they desire such a serious desire for refusal bail? Where would it come in? if these institutions were operating the way they're operating. Secondly, when you go to appoint those judges and magistrates, what consideration do you take into account? Do you take in capacity, efficiency, and ability? Or you just say, this is a cadre of the movement, therefore I must appoint them judges and magistrates. And then when it comes to corruption, all those issues are the issues which the government should be looking at rather than looking at an issue like bail. That it just because you want to imprison the political opponents without giving them bail, then bail becomes such an important issue when in fact what should be important is the institutions that operate. And besides this corruption, besides this politicization, besides all that, they are not free. There is no independent institution in the country of Uganda which can play its role effectively.
Doctor, when you look at such a situation, do you think we are going back to the other law, or the Obote law, which was detention without trial? Is it what the president seems to be directing us to?
For sure. You remember actually, wasn't it particularly when that's what we are talking about? You know, we are going backward in everything in this country. We are going backward. Let me tell you what happened recently. I listened. They brought a motion in Parliament where they wanted is it suspend or to rename the institution of parliamentary studies. And the mover of the motion said, I am bringing this motion. We are not going to read it. It was a law coming forward now to amend the other act. And he said, we are going to have it for the first reading. We are not going to read it for any other reading. And we are going to pass it right now. And we are not going to debate it. So I'm going to read it. They read it. They read the suspension of the rules to debate the law, that regulation, and then they said, all who say yes or no, no. And one member stood up and said, how do we know what we are agreeing on? And the presenter said, no, you shut up. The speaker said, yes, has it or no? They said, yes, has it. And then I remember Obote with his pigeon oral constitution.
Yes.
When he came in and said, I have put the constitution in the pigeon oral, you approve it, you will read it afterwards. I said, my goodness, it is where we have reached. So, for me, you are talking to somebody who really on that day, 2003, when I objected to the removal of term limit, presidential term limit, having been a commissioner on the Uganda Constitutional Commission, having traversed the whole country and getting the people's views on how to change power peacefully and therefore introducing the presidential term limit, when I said no removal of term limit, and I saw the members of parliament removing it, I cried. I walked out of parliament, I cried because I knew we are going back to where we came from. And that's for sure what is happening. Because if you know that right now, by the way, I'm a chair, I'm current chair of Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, and I can tell you that in Uganda right now, the question of civil society organizations, we have been suspended indefinitely, and there are regulations and procedures which were passed by cabinet, which are to the effect that actually there is no non-governmental organization, because if it is the rules are that the non-governmental organizations which are partnering with these foreign donors and partners, they must first be their program and whatever they want to do must first be approved by cabinet and then also goes to parliament, and it is approved by Parliament. And then if you are dealing, for instance, with Citizen Coalition for Electoral Democracy, which is for elections, that we must be supervised by the Electoral Commission. And if you are dealing with gender issues, then the Minister of Gender should be the one supervising it. Now, is that civil society? Is that an NGO? Or is it a government body? That is how far we've gone. So where do you see Uganda going? For me, I don't see it going anywhere. First, we debate and get tired about all these things. And what is so painful is the question I ask myself is, how have we reached here? Because for me, when NRM government came to power, I was one originally with it. I was a UPM member. Went to Museveni, went to the bush. We supported, and when it came in, I had believed that never again will Uganda have to get it back into violence and unpeaceful change of power.
Doctor, on that very note where you are talking, do you see Uganda? Whether in the near future, having change of power without bloodshed? Because that is what you have been all along fighting for. But it seems like we are at the dead drop.
It will take God to change Uganda peacefully. Let me tell you, for instance, among the topics you are going to discuss tonight, as from President's debate, is this whole issue of terrorism. Now, I want to be clear here. When you have a disease and you want to cure it, you need to know the cause of your disease. And then you address the cause. When you address the cause rather than treating symptoms, that's when you are able to cure the disease. Now the question is, why is there terrorism in Uganda? Why are these bombs? Why is this violence? The answer is one. Just refusal to hand over power peacefully.
That's true. That's very true, Doctor.
I was in this country, I was in government for 20 good years. I was in this government. I saw when we worked up to like 15 years, when it was all doing well, we are all working well and things are moving forward. Until this man loved power more than the vision that brought him to power. And when this happened, and he held the grip firm on power, that is the cause of this violence, that is the cause of these terrorists, that is the cause. He knows. Now, how do you fight? He's fighting symptoms. If tomorrow he said, I'm ready to hand over power peacefully, would you see all these bombs, all these troubles? Didn't we run this government for about 17 or so years, 20, without these wars, except when he was fighting to finish the war in the north? Did we?
We didn't.
Now when you say we can't, we shall manage terrorism, which all the money that is supposed to help us in this country, health, education, everywhere, it is all within the army, defense, army, local defense, whatever, fighting your own people. What is it? Let me tell you, if you see what is this line of vehicles that move, we cannot pass via Corona these days. It's like sealed off. The moment he's there, all the security, how can you protect yourself against your own people?
That's very terrible. It's a sign of depreciation in terms of power and in terms of love that people would have for you.
Yeah.
So, Doctor, then I want you to talk briefly about the issue of education, because as a parent, we all have the pain that our children are at home. But here comes a situation that they are talking about a deadline, which again, the Minister of Education has not discussed. The president is the one talking about it, but the ministry has not discussed anything about it.
The ministry, the ministry is headed by who? If the ministry is headed by the first lady and the president is discussing, isn't that what the ministry is talking about? But anyway, it is so painful. It is so painful, and I want to say it very clear that this whole issue of closing schools is not about COVID and people dying. There no money. There are no finances to run the ministry. So that is an excuse. Because when COVID, all these other countries which were so bad off and they started their own schools, when we had the first lockdown, COVID, we had very few cases. And what led us to the second lockdown was because of politics. We told him don't hold elections. You can imagine going out to run and hold elections and spend so much money instead of stopping elections which were meaningless anyway, which were going to cause us COVID. Than schools, you close schools, and yet you opened all these elections, and people went out there and brought us to COVID, this second lockdown, which was caused by politicking and elections, which were bringing forward nothing to this country. And then you close schools, and all money went to elections, and all the money that was collected for COVID to help us during COVID. As you know, Auditor General found that 55.8% of that money was never counted for. So, no money.
Mm. So the problem is no money. Instead, they're just hiding behind the issue of.
I do believe that there was no money to open these schools. You know, let me tell you, when I think you are head of a family, if I use this example.
Yes.
When you find a situation which was not expected that happens in your family, you reorient, you reorganize your expenditure and your priorities. Now, when you put it to the country level, here is a country which is faced with the pandemic. This COVID, which was very, very bad and terrorizing and disorienting everything. What is it in Uganda that they've done to prioritize, to rearrange your expenditure, to rearrange your programs, to rearrange? Here in the midst of COVID is when you increase members of parliament from like 300 something to 520. That's when you create cities and municipalities. You create more administrative units. You do all that kind of thing. And what should be the government be doing? It should be looking at these private teaching institutions and looking at all these other institutions and giving money where you say we are putting in money here to help this sector. We are putting, like, money should have been put in the sector of education and even in health, focusing on human resource and Ugandans. Looking at the Ugandans and how you are going to get them out of this COVID. I don't see any program of prioritization or any strategies drawn here in this country to address the situation and improve it. When I looked at the president with all this defilement of the young girls, 14,000 girls defiled, others married off when they are 13, 15 years. I listened to the first lady
the president said that the death is irreversible, but young people, the pregnancy the children can go back to school, but he's trying to deter them from getting from death.
The first lady first said, you parents, that is your fault. Very, very unemotional, very insensitive to the difficult situations through which parents have been facing during COVID. And then on top of that, the husband adds that it is better have two people, a baby and a mother, rather than having one die. forgetting that actually a number of them have been dying while producing these babies
when they are
because
still
they
young.
was too young.
That's true. That's very
Forgetting
true.
that many people in Uganda died of diseases, died of so many things rather than COVID insecurity when they were beating them during COVID lockdown. Many more than those who died of COVID at all. So COVID, would you say that Uganda has really been affected by COVID to the extent that all schools should be closed up to now when those countries which were very bad off affected opened their schools long ago?
Doctor, as we try to wind up, it seems like Uganda is totally occupied. It's under occupation. And this occupation involves a lot of issues. It involves Museveni as a president, and it involves his system that people refer to as Musevenism, and also the Musevenis, the people that are feeding from his fingers. What do you think if this government is to go, like, of course, any government has to go whether it likes it or not? What do you think that would be the starting point of trying to restructure Uganda?
Well, for me, first of all, if this government is to go, I don't know, but it must go.
It has to go. Yeah.
What I know, I mean, I've lived in Uganda. I saw go. I saw Obote 2 go. Even Obote 1, I was still young, but he went. Came and said, I'm life president. He went. Obote came and said, I'm here. He went. So even this government will go. I don't know how it will go. I don't know when it will go, but it will go. What I know that when it goes, I only wish that it can go and be replaced by people of different vision, so that we start afresh. Because one thing I will tell you, it is true that when Museveni's government came and we took over power, we did a lot. The truth is that we did a lot. There was a big change. In fact, the fundamental change took place until it failed. Because for sure, you can say that for about 17 years, this country was got from the dungeon up to the foundation, and we're beginning to move.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we have caught up by time, but it has been a pleasure having you here at the tower at UNN, and I hope we are having another time. We'll be having another time, and I hope next time when you to come, we shall have your picture, because a lot of comments over here are saying that they wish they were seeing you. A lot of people were very much excited to watch you here at the tower at UNN. However, it was out of our hand, out of our control. And then we shall try to see the best we can do to make sure that we bring you live into the studio, Doctor. Would you have the last words in 1 second? 1 minute, last words to our viewers.
Thank you very much. I was also happy to be on, but I would have loved to listen to the debate in my colleagues who are debating, so that we may supplement one another, but I was not able to listen to them. I hope next time I will be able to see one another and then also listen to one another. One thing I want to say is that for sure, Uganda is on a very bad road. I don't know what we are going to do, but you people, Ugandans outside there, you better rise up and support the Ugandans inside here and tell them to stop fearing, so that we may rise up and reject all this. Because very soon the law on land is coming to make the Uganda land public land, take us back to Amin's time. So you pray. Me, I put everything to God, and I trust that at right timing, let's pray that at the right timing, God may redeem us from what we are in, because it is terrible.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much. We shall be always contacting you, Doctor, for your advice and for your because of the big experience that you have. And we always, we have even an invitation for you at UFCC, Uganda Federal Consultative Council, when we shall have a discussion to deliberate on some of the issues that Uganda needs to look like in the future. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay, thanks and good night.
Good night to you. Thank you very much. That was Dr. Miriam Matembe, who is an activist, and it has been a pleasure having him. Let me bring in Sophia. Sophia, you have heard Dr. Matembe talking about a lot of issues, and she has been very categorical and very, very pertinent and strong, with a very strong voice over what she talks about, with a lot of passion, because she has been part of this regime all the time. What is your take about the president's speech and what the doctor has said?
I mean, first of all, I really appreciate and I'm so grateful that Dr. Miriam Matembe has been able to come on UNN. Once again, we appreciate her wisdom. It's, we're so grateful. However, I really agree with most of the points that she was saying around the abysmal sort of address to the nation and the silliness that it came in, that it was better for our children to remain at home than our children be at school, because the whole reasoning behind it is that there will be more deaths. I mean, Uganda has one of the lowest deaths of COVID-19. That is a fact. So I'm not sure where this president gets his statistics from or reporting from. So, like I said, he's the God and the God and the God, because we do not have scientists or health experts in Uganda who are able to report on the actual facts that we have less deaths to COVID than to the normal diseases like malaria, like typhoid, like tuberculosis, and early maternal death. You see what I mean? It's like it's just sort of a hopeless, and I don't know how to put it, but I cry and I cry and I cry, and I for our children, and I cry for those little children who have now become mothers. As a mother myself, I know for sure at 15, at 14, I would never have been able to manage being a parent. Later on, being a parent in a society which does not value, you being a child. A society which does not, when I say society, I mean the Ugandan society. Indeed, if we valued being a child, we would not have these a whole president, a leader of a nation, saying that it's okay that these children who are having children can actually stay at home, whatever it is, not condemning it, blaming, of course, the mothers, but at the same time not condemning it, and giving more rights to the dead. Let the dead be dead. The dead are dead, and we bury them. We are, we say yes, okay. We're sorrowful. We are people that respect the dead, if anything, but at the same time, we cannot now stop appreciating the living, especially the future of our generation, the future of tomorrow, the children. If you are going to say that we put education aside, I suppose they're realizing their agenda of the Bahima dynasty. The 50-year plan is being realized, and this is how we can see it being realized in the name of COVID. This is all a facade. This is all a sheep in wolf skin, or a wolf in sheep skin, sorry, trying to camouflage what exactly they mean, what exactly they want for our society. So our society is about, do not educate them so that we can do whatever we want with them. We have completely tarnished, and we have completely broken their spirit, or we have put in as much fear as possible so that no one rises up. Ugandans, why aren't we rising up? Why aren't we saying, no, enough is enough? I am not saying that education is the, end of all. I am not saying that us going back to classroom education is the answer to our problems. In fact, it's far from it. But what we're saying is that it gives the opportunity to that, to children, to young people, like it gave us, to be able to sit here and debate and be able to be in, mainstream world and say and represent themselves without that space where you have children go in, in school to learn different skills, that is the the atrocities of our time, the atrocities of our children, that they are going to be left without a basic education, because most education, yes, starts from home, but this education is as important as well, in order that people socialize, people know how the other part lives, children can be able to be left to dream, to hope. They're not being given that opportunity, because now you have a 14-year-old or 15-year-old having a baby, and all they're going to worry about is, where am I getting the next meal? That child is not going to be thinking about, okay, let me be enrolled in school. That child's mother is not going to be saying, let me invest in my child and take them back to school, because you've given them a gap too much for the mother to think, well, if this child can look after this baby, then they might as well continue looking after the baby, and they don't have to waste my money, because you've removed the earnings of the, the parent. You've removed the earnings of the parent, because you've put this lockdown, which is unnecessary lockdown, on the economic and social institutions. This is a very sad time for us, that we have a leader such as him, and then you have an education minister who is absolutely either worse off or the same. But anyway, why should I be surprised? I am not surprised. Only if you did not learn, if you're an education minister, you should have been able to understand the psychology between education, the psychology between child development. A child develops fully between the ages of 0 to 7. So if a child at 3 years old, over 2 years ago, were 3 years old, right now they should be in a position to start school, to start, reception, to start making friendships, to start seeing different environments. And if they're not able to do that, so by the time they go back to school, they're probably going to be 7 years old. 7 years old, they've missed about 3 years of their time to fully develop. And what impression, everything about them that needs to be left in the subconscious mind, which is the mind that always makes us do what we do, or the behavior that we have as adults, we achieve that between 0 to 7. So if you have a 3-year-old, a 3-year-old would have been 7 by next year. And next year, what does that mean? It means that we have a child who has 3 years of absolute nothingness. 3 years of absolute nothingness, and here we are. We now have, and Uganda. All I'm saying is that I can leave these few words to you, is that we have a long way, but at the same time, let's not lament. Let's not feel sorry for ourselves, because the more we feel sorry for ourselves, the more we're going to feel fear, and fear is the worst emotion that we can have as a society. Because of our society being in fear, we are completely paralyzed. They call it paralysis analysis. We are paralyzed, which means we cannot think for ourselves. We are thinking that an external power is going to come and rescue us, when actually the rescue is within yourself. You have the power in you to rescue you. You don't have to be in an education system, which is like the current status quo, to get the wisdom, to get the skills. Teach yourself if you can, teach your children if you can. Do not rely on an external system to educate your children, because what exactly are they educating them? They will educate them on what exactly they want for them to know. Employees, how about you educating them and teaching them that actually with these skills you can be a better person, you can earn a living, you can look after yourself. You do not need to be in an office, you do not need to wear ties, you do not need to accumulate things and things for you to be able to live a contented and fulfilling life. All we want is human beings who have morals to look after the next generation. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sophia. It was a pleasure to have you at the tower. And
Thank you.
actually, we hope that we shall have you another time as we try to discuss deeper into issues pertaining our country. That spirit, keep it up. And I think it has been a pleasure as well for you to be with Dr. Matema at the same platform. Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you. Let me bring in Lawrence at this spot. Lawrence, it seems like everyone in the government is aware of how a monster the government has gone to, how the monster level our government has gone to, that a lot of things cannot be done at all, regardless. The president is the one who is doing everything. According to what you've heard from Dr. Honorable Media Matembe, everything seems to be a disarray. The president is the only one in control. What is your take, and how do you react to the speech of the president?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Juko, for once again bringing Dr. Miriam Matembe, a very experienced and seasoned politician, to share our experience about real issues, and also how she can infer to that experience to what is happening today. How I look at the president's speech, I think many people could have been able to predict exactly what was going to be said in the speech before, because it doesn't seem to change from what the narrative is. The government is always going to defend itself, even when it is the worst position they are in at the moment, whereby we are having. I think we just made an entry in the Guinness World Book of Records for having the longest school lockdown. That hasn't happened probably organized education, if I may use the term. And again, I concur with Sophia, what she says about education, because that was one of the points that was highlighted, that schools will be open next week, and I think it's all next year with the economy opening. So at the moment, we just basically have to sit down and just wait for everything to open up, and then business can get back to usual. But if we're to go and try to pin out who is responsible, or who should have taken, who should have agitated for schools maybe to be reopened or to maintain the school curriculum going per se, I think that would still run back to the same house, which is the State House, where the Minister of Education resides. If she's this close to the fountain of power, and she and him hold the power in a certain way, you would imagine that they would have been able to think through this and give the best way forward for the country, like, trying to emulate what was being done elsewhere. But if there was no effort per se, other than, I think, issuing radios and opening for a week or two and then taking the kids back to school because the numbers are going high. And by the way, please note that Uganda doesn't necessarily have the highest COVID rates in the world. Actually, we were praised for having the lowest. Yes, we could attribute some of that to the lockdown measures, or everything that the government took into action, the guidelines we had. And again, of course, personal responsibility, because COVID wasn't like the most sophisticated disease to deal with. People knew exactly what to do: wash your hands, keep your mouth and covered, avoid crowded places. These are things we could do somehow, somewhere. But looking at where we are right now in the presidential address, it was just an admission of failure, and just, I think, taking people's reasoning as for granted, and you're like, no, this is okay. people got pregnant, but at least they're alive. Yes, alive for what? What life are they going to have? You know, if these are children who should, have turned into doctors, lawyers, all these other things, and maybe scientists, like we say. I think we're trying to push more scientists or have more scientists in the country. If the would-be scientists are now becoming young mothers, and you know what happens with that in places like Uganda is that most young mothers don't usually, finish school. I mean, there's always a percentage that finishes, but most don't. So these are excluded from the economy. These are excluded from every other, domain or facet of society you might think of. And indeed, these usually end up with low-paying jobs or just in the informal sector, which we all know is hard to quantify and have any specific figure as to how much exactly people make or even what contribution they make to the to the country or the economy per se. So for me, my takeaway is it's just admission that things have failed, which anyone can see that yes, we have failed at least to keep the other engines of society running. We can praise ourselves for keeping the disease under control, but again, that goes to everyone. I think everyone did their part. Yes, but then life doesn't stop at just people being alive, because being alive doesn't mean you made it or you're going to achieve your dreams just like that. And the other facets of society, or rather things in society that are supposed to enable you are dysfunctional or turned off. So you collect money for COVID, then it goes wherever it goes. Then you borrow this much money, because we borrowed more than you can expect, especially in the last year or two. But the mere fact that we've driven up our debt to GDP ratio by over 5%, bringing us to the 50% mark of our GDP, that means we've borrowed enough. So we should be able to see that this money has actually been put to good use. I think I was hearing one of the shows we have, I think, with Chimbugwe Live, and it was like, yes, I think the British High Commission was praising Uganda for maintaining schools and having them open. It was a tweet. I didn't get the time to look at it, but I think I would after the show. If we could have it put up, if our producer has it, that would be good. And they're just praising the country for managing to keep people in school. And I think this was a total lie. Yes, money was given, and I think these are just the donors trying to cover themselves. They're like, yes, even if you were closed for the most part, we try to keep the schools open, and we had all these programs. You can see there is a disconnect between exactly what is on ground, what people are enduring, and what the other agencies and partners are reporting. So they are reporting that the radio distribution program was a success, or rather to educate kids on radio, which is the most impractical thing to do today, especially if you have this number of subjects and students that that have those high numbers, as you might know. It is impossible to educate them or have any school or any learning on radio today. How are you going to handle the feedback? Is everyone going to call in? This is the whole nation we're talking about. It's not just a single school. So it didn't make any sense, and I think we must admit that this time around we have failed, and we need to do better. But it doesn't give me more confidence if someone is like, there's no admission of failures, but it's only that everything is okay. It's still aligned with the plan. Which plan is it? Vision 2040, which is being in power for that long. Being in power for long doesn't mean anything if at all you people are not gonna, be in the same bracket or reach that kind of level of success that you have in your mind. It isn't going to be realized in everyone's kind of reality or objectively. So as far as I think, the state is concerned, the president's speech was just to show that, yes, for them, they're on course in terms of retaining power and having power. At least the army is fine. It's doing okay. And law enforcement is, it's well funded. When it comes to schools, that's another thing. When it comes to the judges and all these other prosecutors that, that the issue of bail is getting into their docket, you can see that there we have, they are more silent on that, other than just pushing more laws or more directives on what they should do. But if you ask me, I think it would be more logical if at all we could just assess and see where this kind of misalignment is, in that you can't tell me you have more MPs in a certain area than people who are supposed to maintain or rather ensure that justice is served. It doesn't make any sense. So it's just going back, reviewing, which I'm sure the government might not be able to commit to do. But yes, these voices like ours or discussions like this at least are bringing all that to light. So if our people are to hear this kind of analysis or debate, at least they better understand what is happening and demand for more or better. Join the activist groups that we have, like Miriam Atebe told you she has one. The red card was here also trying to push their thing. I mean, you have all these other platforms that we have that people can get into to try to drive the change, and whichever way it comes, the better. And of course, here at the UNN, we have the UFCC, which is an organizing body or driving body for these ideas. People should get on board and see how to try to change that narrative, because we cannot be giving this kind of message to the world. It is not befitting of people who have been, independent for the last 50 years. This speech wasn't, the best we could really give. We have our wins, which we can agree that, yes, certain things are going okay, if they are indeed. But we should also admit when things go bad and be like, no, we are going to do better in all these other areas of life. So I think I would just leave it at that. The speech, it's the usual. That's why people even don't tune in, but they can always give you. There's usually a teaser where people are always able to give you their reviews of what is going to be said even before it does. And indeed, most people are accurate that yes, it's just going to be, a smooth campaign just to show that things are okay and life goes on. And indeed, it leaves Ugandans powerless because no one is taking responsibility. It looks like no one is to blame, and that's it. There's just a one-way traffic information coming from down, which is very unfortunate. Well, I would like to leave that.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. It's always a pleasure. As we try to, I'll bring over Desire, but viewers keep on watching. Those that have some issues or some points to give out, please send them on the number that is scrolling on the TV, on the screen down there. Can you also have a call in case you feel like you want to call over as we try to wind up this show? Let me bring in Desire on the same note. Desire, Lawrence has been very categorical on issues that Dr. Matemi has said, and also on the issues of the president when he addressed the nation. And here is a point that everyone who comes up tells is that it seems like everyone around seems to be playing on the tune of the president, as Sophia mentioned it. It's the president who is playing the siphons, and then the rest are just dancing on the tune, not even knowing what the rhythm is all about. Can you please dig deep as well on his speech and then give us your view about what you think?
I think, again, thank you, Dr. Juko. But as we go back to the speech, I think it has become clear as day that we are being led by one thing that Sophia did bring up that I would want to stress. We're being led by a narcissist who has decided to take hold of office, take over everything, a warlord, someone who wasn't given power but annexed power, stole power. We know of the lies. We now see all the lies. We're more informed than we were a decade ago. And I think something that I would like to stress from his speech and something that has been talked about is this idea of violence and the violence that exists in Uganda and why this violence is there. First of all, we start with the defilement of so many girls and what has happened with the defilement cases, whereby the perpetrators have not even been held accountable, but no regard coming from the faulty minister of education, who only got that position because she is married to the president. Not the president. This is someone who took over power and is not the legitimate president, but legitimized himself in power because he managed to buy out all institutions. So where we're coming to a point whereby all institutions have been bought, and have been made to bend to the will of one person and their desires and what they want to happen. So that scenario and wanting to hold on to power and stay in power has manifested, as Dr. Matembe said, something that we should take note of, a sort of violence that's unleashed onto the people. And not only does this violence come through the overfinanced military budgets that we have, or the special training that the SFC gets, and you wonder who is the SFC going to enact this special training of repression on. Of course, it's us, the Ugandan people. And we then think about the war that was against the people of Acholi and what happened there. And then we think about the what has been happened to repress people movements and movements that do rise out, uprisings, demanding for change, demanding for attention to the lack of access to material needs. And a lot of funding goes into, again, these militant groups such as the SFC, so that they can always come and repress, or the military right now, which is in Karamoja, again to do Karamoja region, again to do the same thing, to repress the people of Karamoja who are rising up and highlighting that gold is being stolen from their land, and they've been pushed away and moved from their land. But just because the people in power, or the people who have stolen power and held themselves in power through lies, through corruption, and through genocide, that it's been genocide after genocide in order to keep himself and his clique and his group in power. It's only enabled via mass murder and genocide. Again, once again, in Uganda, we could see the killing of so many people in Karamoja, all because they want to be able to, yet again, for 10 years, which they've been doing, looting of gold from Karamoja region and then selling it outside to get money that only benefits a few, but not the Ugandan people. So coming back to his speech, there is nothing that was in the speech that was, first of all, that could resonate with a Ugandan everyday person. It was so detached to the realities of the people. It's as though someone writes this speech and is like, "Oh, this sounds presidential," and then he comes on TV and says it. What we see is a narcissist that is so full of himself that he doesn't care whatever he says to the public, yet just based off of the fact that he thinks he holds so much power because he's been in power for this long, and believes that that in it itself is a guarantee that he will be in power for long. And he is leaning on the gun, the use of the gun, the use of force, and will not stop. So at the end of the day, what we see happening is this. Oh, sorry, you lost my sound. Am I audible now? Okay. I think I'll start from where I was saying that this regime, because it has held on to power through the gun, through the use of the gun and through violence, that's why we see the violence that's happening right now. And we will continue to see this violence until it's put on a stop, because this regime doesn't know of any other way to hold on to power other than the gun, corruption, and the buying out of people. So in regards, and the violence is not only through the gun, the defilement cases that happened, and the girls who were impregnated, and the girls who had to give birth to kids in these conditions, and the girls who are not going to be, that is also a violence of its own. In war, rape and defilement is part of war. So what we see is war being waged on the Ugandan people daily, whether be it economically, whether be it through the denial of access to material needs, whether be it lack of access to education. This is all part of Museveni's Museveni's comfort in using war to remain in power illegally.
Thank you very much, Desire. It has been a pleasure as well when you come over and discuss. And I think it's a pleasure as well sharing a platform with Dr. Matembe, who is so very inspiring and actually,
Oh,
yes.
Dr. Juko, that reminds me of one thing. The last thing that Dr. Matembe said, that we Ugandans in the diaspora should not pay a blind ear to. She said in the end that it is you Ugandans in the diaspora who must rise up and get ourselves organized, and so that we take away fear from the Ugandans back home, so that we guarantee to the Ugandans back home that we're going to be with them during this fight, that we're going to be there till our country is liberated. So the burden is on us to start the removal and the liberation of Ugandans, because if we don't do it, we're doomed. So let's
Thank
not pay
you.
a deaf ear to that note.
Thank you very much, Desire. Thank you for the effort. Let me have, Uganda is having really a very bad shape. As we try to discuss, we are here, but a lot of people are suffering in our country. The jobs are not fair. The basic requirements cannot be obtained. The social infrastructure are broken. The institutions are being patronized. Democracy is at its worst. That people have to fight a lot to have something to put onto their mouth. It is really very disappointing. But the president comes over and starts talking about issues that are really very disappointing. Let's have this video sound, and then after which we make a wrap up.
If you have not
our
got,
producer.
again you go back home. Now sometimes you get little money like 20, 10,000.
10,000 Ugandan shillings is the equivalent of around $2.80. Schools in Uganda have been closed since March 2020, shortly after the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed on the African continent. Some classes reopened in February this year but shut down again 4 months later as the country faced a surge in infections.
When COVID came in, schools were closed. Other activities got closed. It forced youths to come in and involve in this activity, to get some money for survival. It also forced younger children because they had nothing to do.
The UN says Uganda is now the only country in Africa where schools remain closed. 16-year-old Annette worries she'll never catch up on the schoolwork she's missed.
Staying at home sometimes, you cannot have the morale to read books, and you can just sometimes just forget what they taught you at school.
The government says they'll reopen schools when more than 5 million of the country's 44 million people are fully vaccinated. So far, only 700,000 have been. This lockdown is expected to last until early next year, which means more children in Uganda will miss out on one of the most important part of their lives, education. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera. At the Mwero mine in eastern Uganda.
When you look at this stuff around here, as you see them, really very perplexing. The children are really suffering. They are not at school, and the president is not bothered at all. The people in power are not bothered at all. It seems like Uganda looks like forgotten. Everybody is on its own. Everybody is on his own, and the leaders and those that we think have gone to parliament to fight for us seem to have forgotten everything about us. They are busy earning their good salaries. They are attaining everything that they want in the name of fighting a dictator. So Ugandans, it's high time we woke up and start looking at things in a very positive and direct way. Uganda will not be liberated by people from heaven. It's we Ugandans. Before we wrap up, let's have these voices of people that want to contribute, and then after which we shall, I'll have Desire and Lawrence give us the last words and get out of here. Let's have the message.
Thank you very much for the show. And everyone who is on the show, Desire, Sophie, Lawrence, thank you for giving in your time. But then, Me,
Can you make it a little louder?
I have a few points to make. Now, Dr. Juko, thank you very much for the show. And everyone who is on the show, Desire, Sophie, Lawrence, thank you for giving in your time. But then, me, I have a few points to make. Now, first of all, it's about the airport. So now, if the airport is being sold to the Chinese, the airport as well, so what does Uganda have? What are we left with? What is Uganda left with, really? Because everything is being privatized. Okay, there are advantages of privatization, but people are going to lose their jobs as well. Because if they say that it's now given to Chinese, so who are going to work there? Which people are going to work there at the airport? And what are the faces, like Sophie said, what faces are going to appear? And now, is it going to remain as Entebbe International Airport, or it's going to be Entebbe Chinese International Airport? Or they're even going to change the name. They have the right to change the name. So what are we left with? Because most of the important sectors are being sold off. They're being sold off. First, I thought it was a lie when I heard that the airport is being sold off. But then it's the truth. And then another thing, it's sold off, yes. Who is going to take over? What are they taking over, like Lawrence said? And what caused the airline to be taken over? And how sure are we that if it's taken over, it's going to improve? I mean, a lot of money is being gotten from that airport. So I thought they would put it to use because they are not improving it at any one moment. But instead, they've sold it off. So what are we left with? Because really, what is the country left with? Because everything that the guy found, he has sold off everything that he found. And then another thing I would talk about is education, where he came out and blabbed that it's better they give birth than dying. Where did Museveni get that for Ugandans? How did Museveni get the love for Ugandans? Because Museveni hates the country, because there is no president who loves the country can make kids stay at home for 2 years, no matter what. 2 years, because here where we are, we were hit. But we did not, schools were not closed for 2 years. Museveni just wanted to fulfill his agendas, because they say if you want to destroy a country, touch on the education system and the medical system, the country is thrown, the country is destroyed. And he has totally destroyed it, because 2 years, and then the woman comes up with this insensitive thing that the parents were careless. The parents who they said that they should sleep in markets. Is that what she wants to tell me? That they were careless? That's what she comes up. Museveni just wanted to fulfill his agendas, destroying that generation, because that generation is destroyed. And then getting money from funders. That's what he has to say, that he should get that. He should stand up as a man and tell us that this is what I wanted. I wanted money from the funders. I wanted them to say that it's bad law in my country to get money from the funders, not to come up and tell us that it's better to live, to give birth than dying. Where did he get the love? And how did he get the love? He hates the Ugandans. The system is rotten. That's why he is. That's why he wants to destroy everything before he retires. That is, if he will retire, because really, I don't see him retiring soon. The Musevenism is still going on. So if he is destroying everything, that's his happiness. That's where he gets the happiness. He wants to leave it shattered, a country that is shattered. That's his motive, nothing else.
Thank you very much, our the viewer that has contributed to that with that great information and great discussion. As we try to wrap up, let me have a Desire. Desire, can you greet our, say bye-bye to our viewers in 1-2 minutes?
Thank you to all the panelists and everyone who's been here today to share and learn from each other. But not only are we sharing and learning from each other so that we remain stagnant and we remain where we are at, what we're doing is we need to organize ourselves. We need to get ourselves together on the same page with a motive moving forward. Join whatever organization makes sense to you. Join whatever place you think your resources are better equipped for, and let's get to a point where we can see ourselves liberating our country and not lamenting about clearly people in power who have no solutions, are not qualified, and will not make the the change that we need, the change that we need for our people. So in order for us to liberate ourselves and in order for us to get to where we want to be, we must be organized and we must get ourselves into a masses. We must be organized in the masses. It's not just one person who will bring us liberation, but it's a group of us who can then liberate ourselves. So those will be my parting words. And we have a responsibility to our people back home as they have a responsibility towards us. So let's work towards bringing all of us together because clearly, really, we have been on our own. I do not think we are on our own just now. We have always been on our own with this regime and their love for power and their love for looting, corruption, and enriching themselves. They rendered that the Ugandan people are on their own. Goodbye, a good night, a good morning, a good afternoon to wherever you are or from wherever you see us. And hopefully we'll see you next in the next show that we're on or on the next tower show that we're on to again do the same thing and elevate it, and so that we start seeing the things that we talk about manifest in our daily lives.
Thank you, Desire. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and we usually thank you very much for the effort that you put in to make sure that we have a kind of discussion like this, which is very, very ethical and very interesting. Let me bring in Lawrence finally, and then we wrap up, finish up the show. Let's have Lawrence. Yes.
Nadine, for hosting us on once again this great show at the Tower on the UNN. So my thoughts, my final thoughts on this, especially with the video I think you just rolled about gold mining. I remember just a few weeks ago when discussing the Dubai Expo, you saw how we almost embarrassed ourselves in the display of items that were the rest of the world was picking from Uganda. But actually, in the background, I did share with you that we were actually indeed getting more money from the Middle East from our export in gold. So what you have in that video that Al Jazeera just took the time to go on ground and document very well is you can see what exactly COVID has done. It has pushed most of our school-going children into profitable ventures, or rather, they're trying to get money for their day-to-day. So you find the whole family is there: the father, the mother, the brother, the sister. They are all in there. They should be in school, but then they've decided to go and mine gold. And my viewers, this is actually in the northern part of Uganda, which is the same area where I think the president's brother is camping, and everyone is kind of, covered in a shroud of mist, wondering what the president's brother is doing there. Now, if you know that we are getting almost $2 billion from it just in one country we're exporting to, which is the Middle East, that again should, show you, or rather explain to you why Salim Saleh, Major Salim Saleh is in that area. It is purely to oversee such activities. And of course, yes, you saw one of the miners saying he's earning 20,000 a day or 10,000 a day, which is not so, which is, I think, not so bad an income for someone in the rural area. But yeah, they could even get more indeed if certain standards, or if the whole mining activity was organized a certain way. I think they could earn more than that, because at the end of the day, if you're getting 10 or 20,000 a day, you are earning about 100 or 20, $100 to $200 a day. I mean, a month. Not great money, but that's where we are. On the policies that you can, I mean, in regards to aid, I think you could see how our debt, or rather our foreign direct investment correlates to GDP. At the moment, we're about, I think, 3.5% or about 4%. But again, keep in mind that this figure is cumulative. Now, the 3.5% you're seeing, if you go back a year ago and it was maybe 2%, and in other years it has been 5%, that is cumulative. It is what contributes to the 5 or so, to the 50% that we have today, because when these people throw in the money into our economy, it is not repaid back immediately in that very year. So we keep paying up interest and little bits of that money back. So it has accumulated now up to 50%. So this might look like a good figure that shows that we are not borrowing a lot per year, per annum, but cumulatively we are in such a bad position. We are now at 50%, and we're still climbing, by gauging by how much we're spending on all these other activities within. So Uganda, I mean, that's kind of the picture that we have right now, that things are exactly how you view them, or that is if you're lucky enough to make some research. I mean, most people don't review anything. They're going to just entertain themselves with TikTok videos and, all these other entertainment shows that are taking up a lot of time on our TV stations. And I was happy to see that the UCC was saying that some of these shows shouldn't air when children, are, awake or something, which is, I think, a step in the right direction. But again, it's too little, too late. There's still a lot of content that is feeding the minds of Ugandans out there that is actually not helping them, giving them real good information, like, we at the Tower, the UNN are doing, and many other channels that are trying to push out real information to educate Ugandans. So, on that note, I applaud the UNN team for trying to put up shows like this, whereby we can share this information and at least someone out there can understand exactly what is going on. Like, you had the concerns of the caller that we had, that she just doesn't understand what we own right now as a country if we're giving away everything. Yes, that is the reality. We are giving out everything. And yes, we have all those MPs, like you can see, debating all these reports. But again, COSASE just debated, I think, the closure of banks just recently. They put out a very, very good report about how unfairly these banks were treated, and they were not supposed to be closed, but they were closed. So the report is out, it's tabled. Parliament gets everyone informed that this is what exactly happened in the background. Certain procedures were violated, so some people lost their jobs. That is when you know how much money certain people made, or took from all these other schemes. But again, nothing. People cannot exactly effect any action to change any of the things that were done wrong. And even the culprits, which is usually all these institutions and the government actors or players that were involved, kind of get off scot-free. And, if you are to actually, I think these are some of we've just been discussing about bail. If you are to cause financial loss to the government, you are not supposed to be granted bail because you're in a corruption scandal. It's one of the crimes that, for which you're not supposed to be accorded bail. But none of that took place in that regard. But then you're going to go and pick up on a few, political opponents. So people were trying to awaken people and then make a whole fuss out of it. So that is why Uganda is at the moment, quite unfortunate. But we can do better. And with shows like this, if we have guests like Matembi and the likes, all the people who are on these shows, Sophia, Doreen, Desire rather, this is good, Dr. Sampson, this is good what you're doing. Thank you so much for, organizing this and making this happen. And to our viewers out there, yes, be informed, learn and protect yourself, because information is the only security you have. Thank you so much.
Lawrence, thank you very much, Lawrence. And I hope we cannot go beyond this. Our viewers were very, very delighted that you're always with us, and we discuss a lot of issues that really pertain our country. We want you always to participate, as we've had some of our viewers participating. We need your participation. We need your contribution. And we want you to continue with the discussion as we go away. Try to share this video to, or this discussion to all platforms, so that everyone can be able to understand exactly what we are talking about. I cannot also forget to thank whoever behind the curtain down there, who in UNN, who always help us to make sure that things go right. We thank very much our producer, Dr. Samson, who is always with us and make sure that we have something out of the show. And also thank best our viewers and those that we always invite, because they spend their time and their money to buy data. And those that watch, really, it's very, very, we appreciate them very much. As we close down, don't forget to remember that we are having another show coming on as usual on Sunday with, and also we cannot forget to tell you that despite all these, we pray for our loved ones who passed away this week. That is Mama Nalongo and the father to Mr. Sawandaji, who passed on yesterday. That may their souls rest in eternal peace. And we continue to listen and hear all these that are discussed here. I thank you very much. We meet once again on Sunday, the same time. God bless you, and God bless Uganda. Bye-bye. Have a good day, have a good week, have a good night.